Wait, that's a moon.
8. School years in academia, not just for the Cutie Mark Crusaders and Cheerleaders class, but also for the university. 9th, Daring Do, and there's too many books!
We know more about Daring Do and the series and all of the trivia therein than Quibble Pants does.
We will guarantee that. And then our 10th one was the thing that was the real big struggle. Animation error or clue. So we needed 2 addendums. 10th A, narrative beats animation. If something happens in story, but it doesn't match whatever's in animation, the narrative beats it.
For example, there are not 2 Lyras and there are not 2 Bonbons in the background ponies of season 1. They're there, but that's not real.
Right, that's not an actual...
Narrative beats animation.
And then 10th B, in story beats out of story. We know why. You know, there's more than one Lyra and Bonbon.
Right. Also, do you guys know why Galas is blue?
It's because blue is a more marketable color and children will buy a blue toy over a brown one. That's it!
That's it. That's why. Jim Miller said that on Twitter. That he's blue and no other griffin, all other griffins are earth tone. He is blue because it's marketable. Now, in story though, why is Galas blue? Well, because he's one of the young 6 who's going to inherit the Tree of Harmony's powers, you know, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the element of loyalty, and that's why he's blue.
Maybe.
We actually know what element he is, but we're not going to talk about that right now.
That is outside the purview of this panel. Now, our milestones. These are the elements which fundamentally change the show. I'm not going to go through all of them because we just got too many, but these are the things like Luna getting released, the Cutie Mark Crusaders getting founded, Twilight becoming an Alicorn, the library getting destroyed, Spike getting wings. Just so you guys know, I am the Spike fanboy.
Why?
So, this is our final timeline.
Shameless self-promotion!
Yeah, so you guys can either type in all of this, or you can follow us on Twitter, and you'll find the links.
Create a tiny URL.
We are pasting them now in our Twitter feeds.
Well, hopefully. My Twitter feed has been acting kind of funny lately.
I don't know Twit.
Please, I ran out of data like 15 days ago. We're just trying not to be more than an 8-hour drive to this place.
So this very important. We explain why this is the case. So we want to keep our panel engaging, funny, and compelling. We don't want any breaks or pauses that are kind of boring or explanatory. We are all about analyticalness, but this is a 14-page document that lists 199 My Little Pony episodes and where they go over the course of a 7-year period.
And every holiday, those birthdays we found, and the cycles of the moon.
We made a lunar calendar, all from scratch. Oh, I love you guys. Thank you so much. I'm gonna cry because you clapped at that because I'm the one that made the calendar.
Just be about the 100 minutes since the last Apple family reunion.
Don't even mention
Okay.
Although we love it. But yes, that's so you guys can follow along. We don't mind if you have your phones out and are looking down. I completely understand. He completely understands. We're gonna go with it because this is super cool and we want you to look at it, and now you'll have access to the timeline panel even when you don't. So that you can go to your friends that weren't at Bronycon and be like, dude, I have this timeline thing that's completely wild. You won't even believe some of this nonsense.
All right, so now let's get into the cool stuff.
Oh yeah, the meat of the panel.
Now, actually, before we do that, we couldn't get every single episode.
Right.
Not because we couldn't fit them, but because they could literally have fit anywhere.
Yes, out of the 208 episodes that we viewed, we couldn't place 9.
Somebody to Watch Over Me, Traja, Castle Sweet Castle, What About Discord, Spice of Your Life, Viva Las Pegasus, PBOV, Fame and Misfortune, and Daring Done. Which, that one annoyed me the most.
We spent like 45 minutes on that episode. It's 22 minutes long, by the way.
We didn't spend 45 minutes watching it. We spent 45 minutes after we'd already watched it, just going frame by frame, trying to figure out everything else.
Also, you don't have to follow us on Twitter, but please follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. Now, were there any issues we had? Were there things that we had problems that made it difficult?
Yes. The Apple family.
Luna is worst princess.
Yep, princess. Yes.
Let me rephrase.
Why did I agree to be the
Let me rephrase.
Luna
Luna is maybe not the worst princess. She's the princess of the worst thing.
Okay, fine. I will succeed because our script says so, and I'm tired of being bad. There are constant references to moons throughout the show. Sometimes explicit, sometimes hyperbole, just to be extra difficult and painful. But determining how long a moon actually is somehow even worse than whether it's actually legitimate or hyperbolic. In human culture, moons refer to a complete cycle of phases, full moon to full moon. This means that when we see explicit use of 100 moons, see the Apple family reunion, it would be 8 years.
8 years.
This is impossible unless the show takes place over decades, which again it can't because of Tank.
Because of Tank.
Tank is the most important part of our entire time. So we needed an alternative, and he found it.
So, the way it's set up with the Princess Luna and her lunar calendar, whenever a pony refers to a moon, they're referring to 1 week. They're referring to a phase of the moon. And in the show, we had to watch the entire series, by the way, to see what phases appeared in the animation. And we found 4 of them. Now, normally there are 8. There are normally 8. Yeah, the waning and waxing gibbuses are not
they don't
present.
ever show
they never
up.
show up.
We have full moons, waning crescent, new moon, waxing crescent. Now, what we learned about from It's About Time, another great part of our timeline,
Yeah, we love that episode.
is that every
Thanks,
phase of the
Emily
moon
Larson.
begins on a Monday. Yeah. So we know that there's every moon, and as it turns out in our world, every phase lasts approximately 7 days.
Well, in
6.
our world, every phase lasts about 4 days.
4, yeah, thank you.
And then in this world, it's backwards. So it's 7 phases, 4 days. In this world, it's 4 phases, 7 days each phase.
And we know that it begins every Monday.
So,
this is important.
Armed with this knowledge, we were able to place accurately the Apple family reunion. Because we knew it happened in episode 1, and we know when episode 1 takes place because it is the summer sun celebration, which is the summer solstice, June 21st. Because of that, we know that it takes place on the 20th of June, at the very bare minimum. So, that being the case, because they stay up all night that night, so we know it's the 20th, we know for a fact that the Apple family reunion takes place 2.5 years after that specific date. How did we find the specific dates? We'll get into that later, but that's why we like About Time. It's About Time.
It's About Time. It's About Time.
It made our panel.
It allowed us to switch from going, oh, this takes place in spring,
Right.
April, to this takes place on the 5th of May, a Monday. Whoa. Now, Tank, let sleeping turtles
Tortoises.
lie. Rainbow Dash has Tank as a pet. In Tanks for the Memories, Season 5, they celebrate Tank's first winter with Rainbow Dash.
Internally screaming.
That means May the Best Pet win in Season 1 and Tanks for the Memory take place within a single year.
Yeah, it's Season 2 for May the Best Pet.
Thank you.
We didn't even catch that at TrumpCon. Thank you.
Yay! Alright, so in that episode, we see Alicorn, Twilight, and the Crystal Castle. Now, Alicorn Twilight is in Season 3, totally possible and necessary. Crystal Castle Season 5 is impossible due to several other extenuating circumstances, so that's why we had to come up with that 10th rule. Narrative beats animation. The fact that Rainbow Dash meets Spike in the castle is completely inconsequential to the story. That whole thing could have happened in the library. And in fact, as far as we're concerned, it had to have happened in the library because it takes place in Season 5. They don't have the Golden Oaks library asset anymore. They have to use the Crystal Castle.
Yep, so we had to explain it with an out-of-story explanation, and that which is bad, but it is an animation error. Like this episode has to take place in Golden Oaks Library and not in the castle.
Now, Darren and I can't say it, books.
The bullcrap books.
Bullcrap books. Daring Do has a lot of books.
Oh my gosh. There's so many books.
Now, here's what makes it extra annoying. Twilight apparently possesses all of them in Read It and Weep. We only see 8 distinct books by the end of the episode. Now, they only mention 4 books in the series by Daring Don't, with Rings of Destiny being released at the end of the episode.
November 14th, by the way.
Yeah. We learned by Stranger Than Fanfiction there was an original trilogy, might not be the first 3 books, and at least 3 books after the trilogy. We see in total, actually it's 11 because we got riddle.
Yeah, we got the Riddle of the Sphinx.
This was revealed afterward. Named or referenced books. The order, to the best of our ability, is Daring Do and the Crystal Sapphire Statue, or Stone. They change it constantly. Daring Do and the Griffin's Goblet. We know that this is because Rainbow reads it immediately after Sapphire Stone. An unnamed book 3, because this is mentioned by Rainbow Dash in Daring Don't, and we think it's the start of that Tenochtitlan trilogy arc.
The Tenochtitlan.
Yeah, thank you.
We had to look that up on YouTube.
It's amazing I can even spell it correctly, okay?
It's Mexico City, by the way. It's an old Aztec capital.
So Daring Do and the Razor of Dreams was book 4. We know that book 4 was mentioned by Twilight and Daring Don't, but we find out its name in the end in Friend because Rainbow Dash says, Starlight goes, I love in book 4 how the crocodile was turned into a raft. And in that same episode, Rainbow Dash picks up the book and goes, you know how in Daring Do and the Razor of Dreams, Score. Daring Do and the Ring of Destiny completes the
It's a Tenochtitlan.
Thank you, R. Then we have Daring Do and the Curse of the Jungle Queen, Daring Do and the Trek of the Terrifying Towers, Daring Do and the Many Faces of Moon. They're all named by Rainbow Dash and Strange the Fanfiction. We have Daring Do and the Riddle of the Sphinx, which is in Castle Sweet Castle, and Daring Do and the Curse of the Pharaoh's Tomb, which is the book that's supposed to be released in Daring Done. Observations and discoveries. What did this timeline reveal about the series? A whole
lot. Like way more than you would think.
Now, how close the moons line up. Once we establish the lunar week as a moon theory, the episodes line up perfectly. Like seriously,
we're not exaggerating at all.
We got episodes months in advance and could predict the time of day, and it would line up perfectly with a future episode.
We could even find out whether or not, because of It's About Time, we know the lunar cycles start on Mondays and end on Sundays. So if an episode had 2 different lunar phases in the episode, we knew it was an episode that was a Sunday that went then into a Monday.
And what's more to that, and of course, we're going to go quickly to explain why It's About Time.
We don't even really have to.
Oh,
We're making amazing time.
Oh,
Who's familiar with the scientific principle Occam's razor? Oh, wow, way more than you had. What did you watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind or something? They explain it there. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Occam's razor states that given the current amount of research and evidence until further research and evidence is provided, the most likely explanation to a conundrum is the correct one.
There is so much accuracy with the moons. And the other thing that was super cool is that moons were consistent throughout any episode. If you saw a full moon, unless it switched out for a week, it was always consistent. Except in the episodes where Luna is no longer in charge of the moon.
Yep. So when she's captured by the changelings, the moons are messed up. When she leaves Twilight in charge, the moons are messed up.
And in fact, there's even a subtle part in the Changeling episode because we see the moons messed up before we know that Luna has been captured.
Yeah.
So the moon actually gives a clue that something has gone wrong.
Now, with the Occam's razor thing, there is no way that these moons and lunar phases line up so perfectly. The odds are, forgive the pun, astronomical.
The show writers did not intend the moons to be this way, but someone at DHX absolutely has to be paying attention to the moons.
One of the animators or one of the storyboard artists with unerring certainty has to be keeping track of this because there's no way this happened at
The
random.
craziest one we had was student council.
Oh my gosh,
Because
yes.
we had gauged all the moons up, and we went every single moon all the way to, I think it's like year 1007, which is I think
Yes.
the latest year. And we went, okay, so this would mean that around the spring equinox, there should be a waning crescent. We look at that episode, and we'd come to that conclusion, I think like 3 seasons before that point. We got to student council, and we're like, that's a waning crescent.
Yep.
Holy crap.
Student council has a waning crescent.
Like,
Unbelievable, actually, genuinely, I don't believe that this just happened because it can't. It's statistically impossible. Somebody's keeping track of
we
this.
had a Drake and Josh hugging brother moment. Now, it's about time.
This is the best episode of the series because of what it did for this panel.
This episode is amazing because it allowed us to go from just months or seasons to days.
Actual
And
dates.
Dates. Yeah. It mentions Arbor Day, which, just to note, is always the last Friday in April. And it mentions that the episode begins on a Tuesday, the 4th, which we know if Spike is going, what did we miss? Arbor Day? We know it has to be the first 4th after Arbor Day, which has to be the 4th of May as a Tuesday, and it ends on a Tuesday because Twilight goes, I'm actually from next Tuesday
I'm
morning.
from next Tuesday, so it ends on Tuesday the 11th.
And it shows us the lunar phases, which match on the time it should be, which allows us to also know that Tyrek escapes on the 5th of May, 1001.
That is the exact date that Tyrek escapes Tartarus.
Because that's the day Cerberus escapes, or Cerberus runs off, so we know that's
The day after the episode begins.
Yeah.
Because we marked how many days the episode took up.
And of course, with this, it allowed us to get to a level of accuracy that is just stupid.
It's stupid. It's so dumb. We didn't take the time to do it, to give a date for every single episode that we placed in the timeline, but we absolutely could.
Right.
And that's kind of what you guys can do if you want. You can fill in the blanks I have all the tools. I know the lunar phases. I know this episode happens on May 4th. So all I have to do is count back the calendar days, find the correct lunar phase, and then place that day.
And
I think that's it. You guys can do it.
And that first year, from June 1000 to June 1001, is so darn busy because there's 3 seasons, 3 full seasons that take place in that 1 year time span. We had moments where it's like, okay, so they spend 3 days doing this episode, and then the next day they have the next 2 episodes right back to each other. Then we have Discord, then we have
And
this.
then Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy are doing this, but Applejack and Twilight are doing this during the same time because we don't see those ponies in either of the episodes. It's crazy. And how do we know that it all takes place in 1 year? Well, because we know the series begins on the longest day of the 1000th year, which is the summer solstice. So we know when it begins.
And we know that Alicorn Twilight in season 4 is the one raising the summer sun celebration, so it has to be another summer solstice.
Yes.
However, we also see Tank. Tank is the thing that keeps it from being an age. So because we see Tank, it has to be in the spring of 1001, which means that the winter that happens in season 5 has to be that winter of 1001, because we can't have a winter after that point. So that gives us an entire limit of when Tank shows up in the episode.
Yeah.
But he doesn't
This is what we did for 3 months.
We would literally just sit there going, but there's this. But what about
Oh,
that?
what about this?
Oh, all right.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
My head hurts.
Yeah. All right.
Now,
Proceed.
to the thing we actually wanted to do.
Yes.
A friend indeed. Pinkie Pie gives us a list of birthdays. Zikora's birthday is the day before Cheerly's. Cheerly's birthday is the day of the episode, so whenever we can place that episode is Cheerly's birthday. Cheerly's birthday is 132 days before Matilda's and 75 days before Pinkie's. Because she usually mentions it. And we know that Pinkie's birthday in Party 1 is the day after Gummy's first birthday and must take place shortly after Winter Wrap-Up because Rarity mentions a Spring Has Sprung party during Gummy's. Is this the same punch from your Spring Has Sprung party? Twilight's birthday is in Sweet Elite and takes place in April or May because Candlelight Gardens are open for the Grand Galloping Gala, which we know has to take place on the 21st of, I think it was April?
April. Yep.
Yeah, 21st of April.
April.
Now, Spike's birthday must take place in late May, early June, because Spike is hatched during a summer flight camp, Cutie Mark Chronicles,
Yep.
and Secret of My Excess is his first birthday in Ponyville, but if it were happening after July, his relationship with the main six would still be too new, and his relationship with Rarity would still be too new for them to be as close as they are in Secret of My Excess. Thus, has to be in June, right before the ascension of Twilight as an Alicorn. And it also was probably why in the last roundup, why they have to get money to fix Town Hall, because maybe there was a giant rampaging dragon around the week before. And it's also why Light doesn't show up in that episode.
Yeah.
And we know, this is super important,
Yes.
Rainbow Dash's birthday in Pinkie Pride has a cake with 21 candles, and we know Pinkie Pie is the kind of anal retentive person who would put the number of candles on every side of the cake,
Yep.
so that everyone can know how old she is.
Pinkie is a super duper party pony. She is going to put your age in candles on every cake you ever get. Tank will eventually have a cake that's just a fire.
We also have Sweetie has a 5th birthday, and for whom the Sweetie Bell tolls.
This is important, specifically important because we can tell that the Cutie Mark Crusaders were older than 5 when they got their cutie marks, and we also know that 5 is the age that that has to be the earliest we've seen where they lose those creepy little full eyes
And
turn into actual ponies.
Except for Flurry Heart's special eyes.
Yeah, well, Flurry Heart has special eyes because she has special wings and a special horn.
Right, she's special.
But also, somebody brought it up at TruckCon, and I'm going to bring it up right now. Applejack on her birth certificate photo does have the regular pony eyes and not the full eyes.
But they did that to make Flurry Heart not stand out so much.
'Cause it's
Later
next
in
season.
it's at the beginning of the next season, but they were building up the assets by that point already.
Right.
They needed to build up, because it actually takes place in the Flurry Heart reveal episode.
Yeah.
So, we know that she has no cutie mark, but Rarity is an adult at Sweetie's 5th birthday, but we know that the main six also have to have been older than 5 when they got their cutie marks. We
Right.
know from parental guidance that 2 to 3-year-olds have full eyes, a tooth, and no diaper because we see a picture of Rainbow Dash as the best carrot eater under 3. No detail was skipped. we know from the Cake Twins that this actually lines up on their births relative to the timeline. Relative to how old they are, they should just now be starting to change from the full eyes to the regular eyes.
Right, so because they're born in 1001 and they're like 1006, 1007 is when the series is up to. If we see the Cake Twins again in season 9, I would imagine that they will have the regular eyes. Like, that's my prediction. Like, if they show the Cake Twins. We've seen them when Sombra does his mind thingy to the entire town, but it's very important. We think that they can talk at that point, they just don't, because their mind-brain thing, they're mind-controlled, but they can't, they have no diaper, they can walk on all fours.
And they can talk.
And they can talk.
So, in Call of the Cutie, we know the Cutie Mark Crusaders are older than 5, obviously for the same reasons. In Griffin the Brush Off, we learn that Fluttershy is a year older than Pinkie Pie. And in Cutie Mark Chronicles, they show that all 6 ponies got their cutie marks around the same time that Spike was hatched. So however old Spike is the age they got their cutie marks.
Yup.
Now, with all that information in mind... Oh, no, I'm sorry, we got more!
We got more! Oh, we got more!
So, in Going to Seed, cursed be his name, we see a pre-Mark Applejack, a post-Mark Big Mac, living parents, and a full-eye Apple Bloom.
Okay, so this episode ruined my life?
That 100 moon, I can't believe it's been 100 moons since our last Apple family reunion. Apple family reunion.
I still have nightmares.
And then we learn in Going to Seed, which has to take place a long time after that. Man, this is the confluence of Harvest 100 moons in the making. And it must have been at the last confluence.
So this is what happened.
9 episodes. We got through 9 episodes, and the third to the last one ruined almost everything.
So remember that moon calendar that I made from scratch and was really proud of? This single episode didn't just ruin that, which it's a non-canon thing anyway. It ruined all possible timeline placements ever. It is so profoundly handicapping that we had to actually like sit down and discuss how we were going to move forward.
We got into a fight over this. He wanted explicit, I wanted hyperbole.
So this, we'll do questions at the end, I promise. I know you're going to say something about the Apple family, and I hate you.
We're making great time.
Yeah, we're making wonderful time. So I want to pause right here so we can just vent our frustrations. We're not going to get another chance. So this episode, when they have this flashback, right? It's Granny Smith telling Apple Bloom about her basically chasing Santa Claus. Like she's laying out these traps. Like Applejack is laying out these. It's a snipe hunt, yeah. The Applejack is trying to lay out these traps for the great seedling, and Applejack's like all crazy about it. But like she's all the whole episode, she's harping on Apple Bloom for wanting to do this, and like she's just a kid, kind of. She's like 16 in this episode, but she's like trying. She really wants to do this, and she's really happy about it. But Applejack's like, no, it's stupid. Face reality. It's not real. Blah 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 blah. And then there keeps like weird stuff keeps happening, and Applejack's like, maybe it's real. Maybe it is real. I'll give the benefit of the doubt. And then eventually she starts getting excited, and Granny Smith interrupts the episode to tell a story about how Applejack was super hype about catching the Great Seedling all the time.
Well, it must have been at the last confluency when she was about your age.
About her age. So we know something about Applejack. She was the last person in her class to get a cutie mark. But we also know that in the flashback, Applejack does not have her cutie mark.
But Apple Bloom...
But this is 8 years ago. Apple Bloom is a foal. She has the foal eyes, and her mother is alive, for one. And two, she is carrying her as a baby. So it's like, this episode is impossible, because Apple Bloom cannot be that young. She can't. It doesn't make any sense, because the Apple Family reunion thing, that ruined our lives for a while, but then we were like, well, maybe it's just talking about weeks, which is just under a year, or just under 2 years. 104 weeks is 2 years, and 100 moons would be 100 weeks. So it would be 23 months. And like, that makes sense. And then we just placed the episode there, and the moon faces lined up, because of course they did. And everything was hunky-dory. And then
200 episodes all...
Yeah, 200 episodes later,
207
everything's
episodes
fine.
all fit together. This one episode comes along and just like, that's a nice timeline you have.
It's a shame if something happened to it. Alright, so yeah.
We had to come to the final solution.
Granny Smith has Alzheimer's.
You know this is true because she's it's an unreliable narrator.
She is an unreliable narrator, and we know
because she's younger. She looks young and beautiful in the flashback, but apparently around the same time, earlier in the seasons when we see Applejack getting her cutie mark, she is as old then as she is in the current canon. So,
yes.
so Granny Smith made herself younger in a flashback.
So Granny Smith, she's telling the story.
And so in her story, she is young and she looks like she did when Bright Mac and Pear Butter were just married.
Yep, so she is, when she tells a story, she's young and youthful and looks fine, doesn't look wrinkled. And then when Applejack or Big Mac are rekindling a story around the same exact time, she's old and wrinkly, because that's how she's been for a while.
Before Ponyville was.
Yeah, exactly. She was there before Ponyville was.
And so at that point, you come to the realization it's got to be hyperbole. It's not a confluence. Just means it's a happenstance of like this is a very rare event. 100 moons in that case just means very, very rare.
Right. It's like saying I've been working on this for years.
You've not actually been working on it for years. It just feels like it. And Granny Smith has Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Only
explanation.
All right, now, finally, in Where the Apple Lies, Applejack has an older, gangly look. Actually, kind of looking a lot like Fluttershy did in Cutie Mark Chronicles, but you won't agree with me on that point.
I do agree with you. I'm just saying Fluttershy is much younger. She does look similar.
Yeah. Big Mac is finally filling out. Big Mac is turning into Big Mac instead of Little Mac. And the Applejack doesn't have her father's hat, implying he is still alive because he's still using it. Filthy Rich and Spoiled Milk are only fiancés, implying that Diamond Tiara possibly hasn't been born yet. He disagrees, but
that is a discrepancy.
Applejack is possibly younger than Apple Blue, but I choose to believe Diamond Tiara is possibly younger than Apple Blue.
Yes. So the reason why I say that we can't come into any conclusions because there just isn't evidence. The thing that his opinion is running on an assumption, and we can't do that. As much as I love to do that as a feeling type in psychology, I'm an ENFP, I love running with my feelings, but we can't. We have to use logic to get through this because it needs to have evidence. So I think that, what if Diamond Tiara is just a daughter from a previous marriage? Yeah. We've already seen in the Quibble Pants episode that happens in the equestrian world. We know that. So Diamond Tiara doesn't have to be younger than Apple Bloom because she could just be a daughter from a previous marriage. He doesn't think so. He thinks that explains why Spoiled Rich is so mean to her. That got dark, I'm sorry.
Oh, we're gonna get darker. There's something we came across that just broke our heart when we found it. But anyway, now, in conclusion, Rainbow Dash is 27 years old by July 1007, which means she was born in the 980th year. After 200 plus episodes and 3 straight days worth of My Little Pony, we could tell
Precisely one pony's age. Yep, that's it. We'll go back to
2 seconds. The reason we did the whole timeline was to figure out their ages, and after all that, that's what we found.
Yep, this is it.
That's it.
That's the only conclusive stuff. And I was sitting here waiting for the day that we could get either Fluttershy's age or Pinkie Pie's age. Because if we get one, we get them both. Because Fluttershy says, I'm a year older than you.
Or if we get Spike's age, we get all their age.
Yeah, if we had Spike's canon age, we would get all of them. Just legit, just all of them.
And the reason is because Spike's age is tied to a set uniform event in all of their lives. If Spike doesn't hatch, none of them got their cutie marks.
Yep. Which we see is absolutely true because of what happens with Starlight Glimmer.
Right. Spike is the most important character in the entire show because what actually happened. Oh, I did a panel at this. I did a panel about this at TronCon.
Okay, cool down. He's not just Spike. That's a dragon joke. Dragons breathe fire.
We do know a little bit more. Just nothing absolute to a certain number, but we do know. Oh, wait, no.
You have the tab.
All right. we totally have done this before. Now, we do know a little bit generally, but...
Oh, wow.
Oh, nope. And you guys do not need to be seeing my YouTube history. Honestly, it's just a lot of film theory and stuff.
That passed.
No!
My YouTube history has that.
By 6 years.
It's film theory, overly sarcastic productions, and that's about it. Now, we do have one more before questions, and we actually have...
Just a ton of time.
We have a ton of time. We can talk about a whole bunch of stuff. One little bit more. When we were going through parental guidance, we came across a few moments of heartbreak. So there's this flashback, and we see...
I will give you context for this picture. So, if it will show, it will. Okay, so maximize. Okay, so I'm going to give you some context for this. We know that this is when Rainbow Dash was telling Scootaloo about the picture in her scrapbook, which that's how we figured out the whole tooth thing and best to carry it either under 3. So in this episode, she's explaining to Scootaloo how that picture of her was not as impressive because her parents hyped her up so much. It's actually, she got a participation sticker. Now, she mentions in that episode that it's okay because she was the youngest flyer in the senior flappers circuit, which implies that she wasn't supposed to be there. She was in an accelerated program because she was so good at flying. But because the ponies were much older than her, they were all still stronger flyers at the time. And the one who we find at the pinnacle point is Derpy. I'm not going to call her Muffins. As it progresses,
and let me just open all of them up now.
As you see, Lightning Dust takes the first place, and Derpy falls into second, which is fine. You know, Lightning Dust is an incredible flyer. And then into third, she gets the bronze still. And then the fourth picture, she's over here at the pewter.
Her eyes get more crooked as it goes.
Her eyes get more crooked as it goes. Derpy has a degenerative eye disease that's preventing her from being a flyer as good or better than Rainbow Dash. But take solace, even with the maximum progression of her eyes, she's still a better flyer than Flitter. Sorry, Cloud Chaser. That's Cloud Chaser. Yeah, that's Cloud Chaser. She's still a better flyer than Cloud Chaser.
We've been looking at these images for 3 months. Give us a break.
But, yeah, oh, Cloud Chaser is? Hey, Cloud Chaser's awesome. She's just not super great at flying. She gets better though, because she's one of the pivotal ponies in the Wing Power episode. Hers is one of the highest.
She's also
And she's in the Wonderbolt's reserves, that's right. So Cloud Chaser is in fact awesome. She's actually one of the best cards in the My Little Pony CCG as well. So Cloud Chaser's got a lot going for her. We're not making fun of Cloud Chaser too much. Okay. So that is our panel. That is the equestrian timeline in its full entire chronology with lunar calendars. I really appreciate that. That right there, that's why we did it.
Well, actually, I think
Love
we
you
originally
guys.
did it because we were frustrated and annoyed and we wanted an answer to a question.
Okay,
and we
so
didn't get it.
anger was our first motivation. But then love for the fandom was obviously a close second.
Obviously, yes. So we have it up, and
Yes.
if some of the guys and staff could bring a mic around to ask any questions,
We
you guys.
saw him, he was like ready to go. But yeah, we'll do one from each side every time.
All right, and so when you guys have a question, we will raise you up, and you guys want to stand up into the center. So you go first,
Or wherever you're comfortable.
or wherever you're coming.
Yeah, he's bringing the mic. Thank you so much, Bronycon staff, for being really conducive. Thank you. Yes.
Alright, my question actually gets into a little bit of before the show starts.
Okay, sure.
Granny Smith was one of the founders of Ponyville, yes?
Yes, very much.
Twilight mentions in the first Winter Wrap-Up episode that Earthman ponies have been using no magic for hundreds of years in Ponyville, that is tradition.
Yes.
How do you reconcile those two facts?
Granny Smith has Alzheimer's.
Okay, that filthy bitch backs her up.
Right, so it's true. I actually...
Earth ponies have been living in Ponyville longer beforehand. They just didn't live in a town. People can live in an area and it not be designated as a legal town or legal settlement until it actually gets certain laws from like
Right.
a county or a region or however they organize things. Like
And-
nobility, it could be like a duchy or something.
In a diarchy, which is what Equestria runs under, kind of. It's actually a polyarchy, which hasn't actually, I don't think, happened in our history. Have you ever heard of it? Polyarchy?
Like
Many princesses? Or many queens, kings? Okay, so it's a
I think that's
polyarchy,
called an oligarchy.
but it's called a fiefdom, which is a land grant. And you see in Granny Smith's memory them getting the land grant. However, before that, especially when T-Rex says, in the land that would become Equestria, it was nothing more than a mere pastures and farmland. He mentions that there were pastures and farmland that were not part of Equestria. So they probably had something in that area, but nobody wanted to settle because it was right next to the Everfree Forest.
The Apple family was just dumb enough to settle there.
Where's Trelestia?
To be fair, Applejack is one of my favorite ponies, and I want to go to the Applejack appreciation panel, and whoever's running that is an absolute amazing person. But her family is horrible.
We also don't know how long a pony lives naturally.
Yes, that's true, we don't. But we do know that unicorns are probably like elves, because the first unicorn we see that's old is in season 9. And that unicorn has bags under their eyes, but they're still living in the assisted living home. And then the other ponies that are there, that are Earth ponies or Pegasi, are completely wrinkled, like way even more extreme than Granny Smith. It's crazy.
And we also only ever see one funeral, but we've never seen a gravestone.
Yeah.
But we've also seen glue. Come on. We live in a world of harmony. Therefore, everything must be recycled.
All right, next question. Your name here. And then we'll get somebody from like back there.
Why is Spike's age a linchpin? Do you know the ages of Harley and 6 when they got their cutie marks?
Wait, I didn't understand that.
We investigated very deeply what age they could be when they got their cutie marks, even delving into the comic series that has the 2020 anniversary thing. And we tried to like compile whatever information we could about when they get their cutie marks, and we don't. We know Rainbow Dash is 27, so she can kind of be the basis of our entire panel in regards to the age. So if we're saying she's in a summer, or she's not in a summer, yeah, she's in a summer flight camp, and we know Gilda is there, and she's really super young, like she looks even younger than Rainbow Dash. But yeah, she's really adorable. Rainbow Dash is like really young when she was the first in her class to get her cutie mark. So if we're thinking she has to be older than 5, and if she's older than 5, then if we can probably like guess, poke and prod, but we can't for sure find out what her age is, and therefore we can't for sure find out what any of the others are.
The one thing we could tell for certain is that, unfortunately, as much of a spirited shipper as I am, Spike has to be younger than the Crusaders.
Yeah.
Because we see in the episode Going to Seed.
Just missed that one.
Yeah. We see a flashback of Apple Bloom as a foal, but Applejack doesn't have her cutie mark
Which
yet.
means Spike isn't been hatched.
Yeah.
So the Crusaders are for sure older than Spike.
But if IDW 2020 is correct, then that means that Spike is 20 years old.
Right. And then we can just say Spike is 20 and then all the other ponies fall in place.
Because the IDW comic, the whole idea behind the IDW 2020 comic, if it is canon to the show, and I saw evidence to suggest it was, we couldn't come to a consensus on it, therefore we didn't include it. But if it is, the whole impetus behind it is they get sent back in time 20 years to when they got their cutie mark, to the first Sonic Rainbow.
Right.
Which tells us up to that point, Spike has to be 20.
And Rainbow Dash has to be 7 because it's 20 years ago. So Rainbow Dash was 7 in that flashback. And if she's 7, then we can sort of kind of guess all the rest. And we know that Fluttershy's a year older than Pinkie Pie. We can just sort of...
She looks older than all the rest of them. You see all 6 of them. Fluttershy is the only one that's just a little bit taller.
See, he thinks so too. I'm not so convinced of that because her younger brother is taller than her. It could be a stallion thing, but snips and snails.
Well, plus, I would also put it as Fluttershy is still in the summer camp because she's a weak flyer and she's gotten held back a couple times.
Right, which is a good argument.
He does look older than the other one when they come.
So we don't know how old any of the ponies are when they got their cutie marks, so we can't know the ages of any of the others. But we're guessing they're around 7 when they get their cutie marks there. I would put Rarity as the oldest, like for sure. And because she has an actual job, like a real job, that requires a lot of maintenance that we actually see in the show, which is one of my favorite things.
Applejack runs the apple farm.
Applejack has a real job.
And Rarity could compete in the Young Flyers contest.
Oh yeah, that's true. Rarity could compete in the Young Flyers competition. That whole thing was funny though. But yeah, Best Young Flyers, if Rainbow Dash in that episode, by the way, was 20 years old. Because it was in season 1 and
And the cutoff for
she was 20, so Best Young Flyers was probably under 21.
Yeah.
And then Rarity was just like, push off, I don't care.
Alright, so, next.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
We'll go with, I saw the guy back there in the maroon shirt. He was pretty excited. Yep, right there.
I'm gonna trust your judgment because it all just looks like a bunch of heads to me. You're taller, so.
And then we'll bump back
Oh,
over
way
there.
back there.
This.
So this is what the world looks like for you.
This one's kind of dark.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right.
I know you don't have an exact age, but how old would you say Applejack was when your parents?
That's a good question because there's evidence that Applejack and Big Mac remember them, but Apple Bloom does not. And we know that they pass away after the flashback that happens in
where the
apple lies.
We know
because she doesn't have her father's hat.
But she does have her cutie mark, which lets me think that the flashbacks happen in a certain chronological order. The going to seed flashback is the first of the flashbacks. And then I think maybe a few months afterward, is the Cutie Mark Chronicles, which their parents are still alive. For whatever reason, Applejack has to, for some reason, just decide to move away. We don't know her reason why. Maybe it's for that Apple country star thing she does.
Oh, yeah.
That was another thing. I was like, is that real?
Applecorn,
Yeah. And then we see probably just soon afterward, maybe just a few months after that as well, we see Big Mac now starting to bulk up, fill out.
He's got the yolk that fits now.
Yeah, it seems like he's taking on more responsibility of the farm. I wonder why.
Yeah. See, we're thinking that this is a complete shot in the dark, but I think it was tuberculosis. I think her parents died of consumption, and the reason why pear butter passed away is because she got it from Bright Mac because she refused to leave his side. Because I can't watch that episode without crying. Because when you get consumption, you have to quarantine that individual in a room by themselves, and you have to kind of wear face masks, but they don't have magic and they don't have medicine. So when Bright Mac got it, then pear butter just would not leave his side, and so Granny Smith quarantined the other children from them, and then they died at some point after where the apple lies, maybe a year or so after that.
It might even be sooner than that, because I just realized something.
Oh?
What is the whole impetus behind that episode? Or why does Applejack and Big Mac lie? Because they want to prove who's really in charge of Sweet Apple Acres. What would the point of that be if they had their parents, if their parents were in an active role, they would know who's in charge around Sweet Apple Acres.
Their parents.
It would
So
also
that's
explain
true.
why Granny Smith was so willing to go to the hospital and why she wandered off.
Right.
Parents would be at the hospital.
Okay,
And that would
so
also be what Apple Bloom is.
with that information, knowing that they're arguing for who owns the farm now, which means if she had just gotten her cutie mark and she was the last in her class to get it, I would put her at about 13 years old when she passed away, and Big Mac would probably be maybe 16, probably 15. They're probably closer together in age than they appear to be.
Yeah.
So 13 and 15. So they were teenagers, and that would put Apple Bloom, by the going to seed logic, at 5. If we're going to use the 8-year 100 moons logic, which we cannot avoid doing because of the way their ages appear in the animation as well, then she would be around 5 years old, which means she doesn't really remember much of them. But even then, we can back it up further and say she still had her full eyes, and then Applejack was 12 and Big Mac was 14. So it was definitely when they were really young.
We have that's the thing we have clues. We have little tidbits, but we don't have the smoking gun. We don't have Colonel Mustard in the observatory with the wrench. We don't have that. We have the wrench, and we have it somewhere on the west side of the building. We don't know more than that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we're gonna go. Who you can pick somebody? I picked them. Somebody in the back.